Welcome back to Normalized PTSD. So we had Mike, then Sarah. Today we have Abby. Abby's going to be the leader of the spouses group. This is going to be a group that's based out of the Bank of America little network. So it's not going to be out there for everybody, but I think it's a really good structure, as well as there's always going to be some useful information provided. So hope you guys enjoy it. And with nothing else, here's Abby.
How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty awesome. Thank you so much for jumping on and having a quick chat. I was speaking with Sarah, and she mentioned that she was in the spouses group, and you were the organizer. And I was like, ooh, what an interesting topic to discuss for, like, you know, I imagine you're not the only person in the world with like a spouses group. So I just wanted to get more information about that.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about, so you're doing a podcast? What's the context for what you're working on, so I can make sure whatever I tell you is relevant?
This was kind of a new idea. It started about 2 months ago. I just had some free time, and I enjoy everything PTSD related because I'm a combat veteran with PTSD. So I just started pulling on the thread, reached out to friends, and wanted to see if any of them wanted to share their story on how they found, what ways they found to improve the quality of their life. And then I started seeing that it also impacts, you know, families, which is obvious, but not something I thought of. So then I was like, well, you know, it's pretty important to get the other side of the house out, you know, like some talk about the secondhand PTSD, ways to prevent it, things that are beneficial for the kids as well as the parents and the spouses. So after talking to Sarah, she mentioned you, and I was like, ooh, that'd be a really interesting thing to get out there too. So yeah, it's just anything in regards to PTSD, the veteran with PTSD, and the support structure around it. And things that I'm seeing is like a more informed support group makes a better support group, you know. So whether that means more informed by having these spouses groups, or, you know, going to therapy together and being open and honest with your spouse about like what you're really dealing with, so that they can help. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
I mean, I think people think PTSD, they think flashbacks, but they don't realize how it manifests for different people. So I think more information is always better. So I think I really appreciate what you're doing to get the word out. That's great.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, I'm just really, I think there's a big stigma about PTSD, and some of it's warranted for sure. Like, you know, the aggression, the alcoholism, substance abuse, that is a real common thing with PTSD. But once you're past the pretending you don't have PTSD and actually start working on it, then I feel like a lot of those symptoms go away, and you're actually more sympathetic in a lot of ways. So yeah, I just want to like kind of normalize the whole idea, because a lot of my friends, you know, they like whisper about it, you know, like turn, look left, look right, make sure no one's around before they start talking about any issues that they're having. And I'm like, that seems a bit silly. We should just be a little bit more real about it.
Yeah, totally. So so you're out of the military now?
Yes, I've been out for a little bit. I've been out in Hawaii chasing contract dollars, and I just had a little bit of break, and I was trying to figure out how to, like, you know, give back to the community, because I've been spending a lot more time with the EOD community, like going to the memorial and stuff like that. So like it kind of just sparked a fire in me a little bit more, because I've been working with my PTSD pretty aggressively for like the last 8 years. And when I go back and spend time with those that may not have, it's really noticeable. And it's like, dang, you know, it's like maybe, you know, it's hard to like, hey buddy, you know, like do this or like try this. It's more like, you know, live by example, so they come to that idea themselves. And I find that to be a little bit, I don't know, better approach.
Right. No, I agree, because I feel like a lot of people don't want help, certainly don't want to be told what to do.
Right. That never works.
Or especially if they're not really. Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
They succumb to it themselves. So, well, that's awesome. Well, so yeah, Bank of America has, within the bank, we have what we call employee networks, and they are networks of people who identify around a population or an issue. And we have a military support and assistance group for veterans at the bank, or family members of veterans, or we have a Black professionals group, we have a women's leadership group, we have an LGBTQ plus pride group. So we have all these different networks at the bank that kind of come together around a population to provide support, professional development, community engagement to its members. And so within the military support and assistance group, I can't take credit for it, but a few years ago, someone said, hey, we should do something just for military spouses at the bank. And 3 years ago, I had been very involved in the group, and they said, hey, would you be willing to take this over? And one of the things that we had recognized is that military spouses, particularly in corporate America, face unique challenges because they relocate frequently. Sometimes employers are supportive of that. Sometimes they're not supportive of that. A lot of times, my husband is in the Army, and I always like to joke that the Army likes to buy large plots of cheap land in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. So if you get relocated to Fort Riley in the middle of Kansas or out in rural California, a lot of times there are not job opportunities available to you as a spouse. And so it's very difficult on your career retention, your career progression. And so this group was formed to kind of support each other through those changes. Also make people aware of benefits that the company, Bank of America, offers. Also benefits available through the military that folks may not be aware of. So it's been a very useful group, and we meet quarterly. We have a kind of a big forum meeting that we meet quarterly, but then we've also formed some subgroups within because one of the things we heard is that people just want to get to know each other, and a lot of times we're in all different locations. So it's a virtual group. My co-lead lives in Boston. I live in we just PCS'd last week, so we just relocated to the Washington, D.C. area. But our members are all over the place, from Hawaii to New York, like all over the United States. So it's been a really useful group to kind of share resources, hear about things that are going on, and support each other. And as we've gotten to know each other, I think, and as we've developed relationships, it's been good to talk about, hey, how has PTSD affected our lives or our work lives? And I think in a corporate work setting, people are not often willing to open up about that and talk about that. But when you have a small group of people in the same situation who are going to be understanding and sympathetic, it's been really beneficial to kind of be there for each other.
Yeah, no, that's exciting and awesome. Do you guys extend invitations to people or spouses of veterans that are outside of Bank of America also, or is it just really in-house kind of stuff?
It is just in-house. So it is just spouses that work at the company, because a lot of what we're doing is sharing resources for the company. And one of the biggest initiatives that we have been working on right now is advocating. So right now, obviously, we're all working from home for the last few years with COVID. Right now, the company is working at bringing everybody back into the office. And right now, they're really focused on bringing people back into the office, and that's a big push for the company. And so what we're trying to do is advocate for remote work or flexible work for our military spouses who may have to relocate, and trying to get exceptions for them so they can keep their jobs even if they have to PCS to a location that Bank of America doesn't have an office or that their line of business isn't located in. So one of the, a lot of the work we do is internal focused because we're all bank employees. So
right. Well, that's exciting. Hopefully that works out. I feel like COVID, if anything positive came of it, it's, remote work is something that we can achieve and do.
Yes. So our leadership has been very supportive. We presented 2 weeks ago to our military network executive leaders, and they have all kind of pledged to advocate and support for military spouses, keeping their roles and working remotely, as long as the job position allows for that, or they can continue to do their job, and as long as the individual's performance is meeting expectations. So So we have some positive movement in that direction. I would like to see kind of a company-wide policy that military spouses can work remotely. We haven't gotten that far yet, but our leadership is supportive and is willing to champion military spouses who are relocating. So that's a great start.
That's awesome. So on a personal level, like how impactful was the spouses group for you? Like, did you find benefit, and if so, how?
I found a lot of practical benefits from it. I mean, one, just it's interesting because I have led many FRGs before as well. And while I have a ton of friends that are military spouses, there are often not, it's hard for military spouses to work for all the reasons that I've said. So a lot of spouses that I've met through the FRG don't work full time. And they certainly don't have, and sometimes they do, but I just tell people I sometimes feel like a unicorn to have a great like corporate job that I've been able to keep and grow over the last 10 years. So, so in FRGs, a lot of the issues that I have with like working and PCSing and deployments they don't necessarily have those same issues. So it's been great to meet other military spouses that are dealing with like, okay, how do I keep my job and participate in my work life in a new location, or how does like tax implications of being a military spouse, because there's all kinds of tax implications, or hey, my co-chair told me like, hey, when you sell your house, and be really thoughtful about like the tax implications of, the gains you're going to make on your house. And so, and then, when they did the tax, during the Trump administration, the tax rebate, and then they ended up taking it out of people's paychecks the following year, making folks aware of that so they could budget for that. And then also just on a personal level, connecting with other people and just sharing kind of, personal support. We have a group of spouses that are all PCSing this summer. And so we've been meeting monthly to talk about like, okay, how have you found childcare for your children this summer? How was the home buying right now is like crazy. Like, how did that work for you? What strategies did you use to buy a house? Like, how did you manage like your 10 days of hotel, that the military gives you while moving and trying to buy a house and sell a house? And so just having people who are at the same stage of life so you can share resources has been really helpful.
That's amazing. I'm just sitting here thinking like, wow, all the things that go on behind the scenes, like I imagine your husband helps, but I also imagine that this is your wheelhouse, it's like, okay, and you got your checklist, you're like boom, 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 like knocking it out, and he's at work flying,
exactly
it's like,
right.
that's pretty exciting. That
I know, it is exactly right. I mean, I basically handled all, like the whole home selling and home buying process, because he just didn't have capacity with his job. And I mean, I was working full time too, but took time off to go find a house, and then compared. He's like, oh, you're the banker, you should figure out the best loan rate for us. So got all the different mortgage loan offers and comparing loan rates, and should I buy down points, should I not buy down points, and trying to figure that out. And so yes, it's a lot. And the move on top of it.
One of the super helpful things for, I guess, improving the quality of your life, especially when dealing with PTSD, is security, and financial security is like one of those big parts of that. And it sounds like there's tons of resources to help you guys stay on point in that direction. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, being a dual income is obviously incredibly helpful for our financial stability as a family, but also Bank of America has a ton of resources to support employee financial wellness, like education resources called our Better Money Habits website, which if you're interested in going to bettermoneyhabits.com, they have like all kinds of resources around budgeting, investing, buying a house that are available to everyone. And they have military specific lessons on there too, to folks who are transitioning into the civilian workforce. So that working for Bank of America has been really beneficial for our at least financial stability as a family.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll add that in the show notes for sure if anybody's interested. So circle back to PTSD. Was this spouses group beneficial in that way too? Maybe share stories. It sounds like there's resources. Were you able to get some sort of, like, is there any books or anything that stood out on PTSD to get more information to be better suited to help in that regard?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think PTSD, as I've met spouses through this group and we've gotten to know each other, we have connected online, like in a one-on-one setting, because I still feel like in a group setting, especially in a work environment, it's a very sensitive topic. And I don't feel like there are enough resources out there, especially for families, on how to deal with it, because, my husband's been in the military. He was Special Forces aviator. He just got back from Afghanistan last year. He's deployed, I don't know, 5 times, I guess, since we've been together. So it's interesting, and I wish I had more resources, because sometimes I'm like, wow, sometimes PTSD doesn't look like, oh, I'm jumping every time there's a loud noise. It looks like you're just being a jerk. And like, that's what it feels like, right? Like, you're just an asshole. And it's like, okay, no, he's like been through traumatic experiences and that's why he's reacting this way. But to people who don't necessarily have the context or know that, like, they're like, you're just being a jerk. Like, why are you acting like this? So, I've been able to connect one-on-one with spouses offline who said, oh, your husband just came back. Mine did too. How are things going at home? How has it been? Because I think civilians think, oh, your husband's back from deployment. It's all like flowers and roses and it's great. You're one big happy family again. And yes, we're so happy to have him back, but it is like, it's a struggle. It's a struggle because he's not the same person. He's not the same person that left. And every time he comes back, he's different, and reintegrating him is different because he's now just missed a whole year of my child's life, and she doesn't like the same things, and he doesn't know how she likes to have a bath. He doesn't know what books she likes anymore to read, and it's hard. And it's really hard.
Right. I don't have kids, but I've got kids and nephews and nieces, and that was like one of the hardest things for me. Is like every time I left and came back, it was like coming back to like a shadow of what my life used to be. It's like everything's evolved and changed, and we as people change while we're over there too. So when we come back, it takes a couple months to adjust back to normal life and have that become the new norm. So that's definitely a struggle for sure.
Yeah, and especially because my last deployment, my husband left during COVID, and so I was home with my daughter for a year, and it was just me and her essentially for a year, and while I worked from home trying to take care of her. And so she was very clingy to me. And then we moved to a new house. He got a new car. So I told him when he came back, I felt like it was like, this is your new life. Like, it was like a whole new, like new house, new car, like your kid's a whole year older, a whole like different person. We've had this like really tough year, not the same level of toughness, but like no one's shooting at us. There's no like physical danger, but like we've been isolated for a year essentially, from friends and family and from him. And so, it's really, really hard to kind of come back into that.
Yeah, it's emotionally draining, like being apart. That was brutal. I always tried to be single when I deployed because I've seen the struggle and the anguish caused on others while they're over there. And it's like, whew, that's tough. And I can't even imagine. You guys are, amazing for going through that and coming on the other side on top,
Yeah. And something I always tell people, which I think is hard that they don't think about, is during a deployment, like at least in my situation, I don't know for everybody else, is like your spouse doesn't always have the emotional capacity to support you, right? So it's like, so I got COVID, the OG COVID, like in 2020, and I felt fine. I was not sick, but he was worried that if I got really sick, like who would be able to come take care of our daughter, right? Because you can't ask someone to come into your house when you have COVID to take care of your kid. We didn't have any family in the area, so he was worried about that. But I was like trying to work from home. I had COVID. I couldn't go anywhere, couldn't have anybody over. It was just me and my daughter. And I would try to complain to him to just like vent, but he's, in Afghanistan trying to close down at Bagram and like stressed to the max, dealing with COVID over there, which is a whole different story. And so he has no sympathy, no empathy for my situation. And it's really hard to have a relationship with someone who, when you're like, man, I had a really hard day, and they're like, oh yeah, poor you had to stay at home all day. When? You're like, okay, I realize your situation is harder, like much harder, but like,
right.
Like
I'm not comparing. I'm just saying mine sucked too.
Right. I was like, I know yours is way worse, and you can complain to me about it, but like, can you just pretend to have sympathy for me? Like, it's really hard. So that's tough, right?
Right, but then you got the spouses group. Is that who you go and you're like, hey, listen, this is where I'm at. Like, how do you guys deal? Like, and then you find new ways to deal with it, as well as then you can talk to another spouse and be like, hey, my day sucked. And they're like, you know what, my day sucked too. And like, you're not comparing like to overseas, then you have more relatability. That's cool. But go ahead.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so when like you just realize like, okay, I cannot vent to my husband about this stuff. Like, and so that's why where the spouses group comes in, I can call my friend and be like, look, I had a crazy day at work. My kid's at home. She's mad 'cause I haven't given her any attention. Like, can't leave the house. Like, I'm having a really hard day. Like, I'm trying to do it all by myself. My house is a disaster. My kid's been destroying it. Like, and she's like, totally get that. Like, same situation here. And it's just like, you can relate and have someone who understands you, and that's been just incredibly helpful.
That's awesome. Well, I have some other guests that are going to come on eventually. I'm trying to contact them now, and they're more focused with spouse and families in secondhand PTSD. So when I get more information, I'll definitely shoot those resources your way, books and stuff like that, and hopefully that can help you guys in some way, for sure.
Yes. Please do, because I would love to share. One of the other things that we do is when I come across resources for spouses around anything, I share it with our group to say, hey, like, here's hiring opportunities for military spouses, or here are, discounts or anything. So please share that, because I think more spouses could benefit from more resources. I will say the bank, too, has a team that's called our Life Event Services team, which is essentially it's a team that's, if you're having any like personal life issues, they can support you. If you need to, talk to a therapist or talk to a counselor, they can refer you, and the bank has benefits around that. But they also have a team that's specifically focused on supporting military and military spouses. So if you're PCSing and you have trouble finding childcare, they can help you with that. If you're trying to figure out if your job is flexible, they can help you with that as far as talking to your manager and talking to HR. So would love to make sure that team also has those resources. It's like, because it's the same number you would call if there was like domestic violence or some kind of problem. So it'd be good for them to have those resources too.
That's amazing. Sounds like Bank of America's got it squared away. You almost can imagine if they just have like a little off branch that was a non-profit that kind of like helped everybody. But that's amazing that you have those resources available. And yeah, hopefully we can find some stuff outside of Bank of America that can do similar things too, because I think a more informed spouses group and, close-knit family group, that definitely strengthens the whole family as a whole.
For sure. Yeah. I always think the more information I can get, the better.
So in closing, if you were talking to another spouse who has a person in the military and, maybe struggling with PTSD, like what would you tell them to like, hey, like if you were like to give that information to them and be like, hey, this is what I would do, or something along those lines?
Yeah. I mean, I would say build relationships with other spouses and make yourself aware of the resources available to you, because I know there are counseling resources through the military that are available to family members. Just take advantage of all those resources, but build a network, and having other people that can understand your situation without judgment and who can support you is just essential as a military spouse, because there's a lot of times when we're on our own or we have to deal with things by ourselves, and having a network, everybody needs a network to support them. So.
Right. 100%. And I'm going to do a dive into some resources after we finish up, and I'll add those onto like the end of the post notes when in closing. Be like, hey, in summary, these are some resources available for spouses outside of Bank of America. Dot, 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 dot. But
perfect.
that's it, Abby. Thank you so much
Okay.
for jumping on here. I really appreciate the chat, and I thought it was really informative, and it's amazing. Like, what you guys do as a group is really, it's just, I don't know, it's hard to put in words, you know? It's awesome.
Well, I mean, I feel like I'm happy to be involved. It's selfish because I'm like, I want to get to know other military spouses. The group has helped me, and I love building relationships and talking to people. So, I'm glad to do it, and it's selfishly advantageous for me too to get to know those folks.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up there with Abby. I did a little bit of a dive into some resources that spouses can look for to get a little bit of more information. One is a book, I believe it's called Loving Someone with PTSD. I'm not going to try to pronounce the name of the author. I'll write it in the show notes. Go check that one out. As well as there's 2 retreats. Both have resources pages. Lone Survivor Foundation is one. It specializes in, I guess, the person with PTSD and the entire family. And another one I just talked with is Boulder Crest. Both those websites I'll throw in the show notes. They both do things for veterans as well as the family. And hopefully I can find more resources out there that are really helpful. Yeah. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Hope you guys have a good one. Peace.